So today we are going to look into a very serious matter in postgraduate study, whether you are doing your master's or even your PhD, the literature review. The literature review is something that is very essential for any postgraduate student whom actually I would say that would like to do a study in whatever area, all right? And literature review is the very basic that I would say for any kind of a research activity. So failing the literature review, you will be actually not able to do a proper study, all right? So that is very important for you. If there is a possibility that you need to actually have a very good literature review so that you are able to bring your study to the next level. So before we start to know about how to do a literature review for our postgraduate study, whether you are doing your master's or your PhD, it is important for you to know what is the definition, why we really need literature review. A literature review basically surveys scholarly articles, books, and other sources relevant to a particular issue, area of research, or theory. So the key word here you have to always remember is the surveys. All right. What it means by surveys, it means that you have to do a kind of a searching. All right. You have to do a proper search for the literatures that available for your particular study. All right. It can be in terms of scholarly articles, books, or other sources, all right, that relevant to the particular issue, area of research or theory that you're going to research. All right. So if let's say you are doing in a certain area of study, so just concentrate on that particular area, right? Yes, you can actually expand your knowledge, but in terms of literature review that you are going to present in the thesis, it must be very much relevant to the issue, right? And I can see some of us like to do something that is extra, more than that required area of study, all right? You like to put so many things in your thesis, which is become irrelevant, right? So you have to remember that this particular literature review should be done on a particular issue, area of research, or theory. And you have to do survey basically. So how you're going to do the survey? It is through doing the proper finding. So searching in the databases. It can be either in Google Scholar, Scopus, or Web of Science, or any other databases that available. And I think that our library has actually subscribed to this particular, databases. So by doing so, basically, when you are actually doing the searching and also the reading of that particular references that you collect, you are able to provide description, summary, and very importantly, critical evaluation of this work, right? So usually what happens is that in many of the theses, then when you're writing, you're just describe and summarize. But how this particular description and summaries that you actually have reported in your thesis has actually have some kind of a linkage with your context of the study. It is not been fully described. So this is where the critical evaluation is very important. So you don't just mention about what are the other studies actually have done and what are the other arguments, okay, other people's argument, but you have to also come with your own critical evaluation after reporting other people's argument and other people's statements. All right. So you have to remember that when you are writing a thesis for either master's or PhD, you're actually establishing yourself as an expert. So when an examiner reading your thesis, he or she really want to actually project yourself as an expert. Okay, they want to see you as an expert. So just by merely reporting the summary or description of other people's work in your thesis, it is not enough. So that is why, all right, I have actually simply put the critical evaluation in a bigger font here, right? So the critical evaluation is very, very important. All right. So the literature reviews are basically designed to provide an overview of the sources you have explored while researching to a particular topic. So this is what I actually have mentioned just now. So to demonstrate to your readers how your research fits into the larger field of study. All right. So this is very, very much important because as you can see, most of us are doing education research. So in bigger context of education, you actually chose one particular field. All right. It can be science education. It can be social science education. It can be history education, humanities education, and whatever. All right. And now what you have to come is that how your particular study fit into that particular the area of study, and how it can contribute to the larger context of the study, which is the education. So you have to actually look into or visualize in that manner so that you are able to come with that kind of a literature review writing, right? So some of us like to be very specific. That is very good. But somehow, when you are going for a very specific thing, in your writing, you have to expand as well. All right. So when you're talking about STEM education, yes, it is good to focus on STEM education, yes, but at the same time, you have to bring it out from STEM education to a larger context of education somewhere in your way of, in the process of your writing, whether it can be in chapter 2 and also in chapter 5, you have to bring it, to expand it. So that is what it has been mentioned here, to demonstrate to your readers how your research fits into the larger field of the study. All right. So that is why you have to be very, very careful, and also need to be very consistent when you're doing your literature review. All right. And you can see here that nowadays the literature review itself, it is become a very important thing. All right. Not only today, it is many years ago. But nowadays, all right, the examiners, when I'm actually become as an examiner myself, or become the chairman for the Viva presentation, I would say that most of the examiners nowadays would like to see the very important thing in the literature review is that how you are actually trying to link the past research that you have actually reported in your thesis with the current research that you're doing. So there must be some kind of they need to be established, the linkage, all right? The linkage need to be established. Well, that is the most important thing that the examiners would like to know about it, right? It is, okay? So that is very important for you to know about the literature review. So this is the first thing that you have to bear in your mind when you're doing your literature review, to know the real definition of literature review. Because most of us, we are actually doing literature review without knowing what is the main objective of the literature review. All right. So now I really hope that you have a clear idea about literature review. But somehow we also need to answer this question: why we need literature review, right? So why it is so important for me to have literature review in my thesis or overall in my research? All right. So first of all, why you need literature review for your particular research is that research is carried out primarily to improve the knowledge or establish a theory in a field. All right. So make sure you got this idea. That means you want to improve the knowledge or establish a theory in a field. So establishing a theory means you're doing a grounded theory research. Then you will be establishing a theory. But most of us in UPSI here in UPSI, all right, we are actually trying to look into improving the knowledge or improving the body of knowledge, or we want to contribute some kind of elements in the theory. So that is become our core, or I would say majority of us are actually doing that. So in order for you to know that your study is going to improve the knowledge, there is where you have to do this so-called what we call as a literature review, because you have to know what is the current practices or current knowledge or what is the current theory in a certain context of the study. So that is where you have to read, right? You have to read the references. You actually read the literatures and so on. So to establish yourself, oh, okay, this is the current thing that is happening. So how my particular study could contribute to that, all right, in enhancing the knowledge or actually bringing a new area of research in that particular study context. These are the things that you have to actually ask yourself, all right, when you're actually embarking your study, basically, all right. So the first thing is that to improve the knowledge. So you have to ask yourself, all right, so actually, is this my particular study is actually improve the knowledge or improve the theory that exists in that particular context of study? So you have to know that. The second one is that all research builds on existing established knowledge in the field. All right. So when you actually want to do a research, there must be an issue to solve, right? A problem to solve. So basically, this particular research actually builds from that, right? So you have to actually know what is the knowledge, what is the current development in that particular area of study, and how you are actually trying to establish the gaps that exist in that particular development, so that you are trying to do a solution towards it. All right. So this is the second thing on for why we need literature review. And the third one is that a literature review helps in familiarizing the extent of knowledge in the field. All right. So since some of us, okay, let's say you are a master student, this is something that is very new for you, this particular area of research, where some of us in PhD, we are trying to expand, all right, our master's research, right? So that won't be something that is new for you. But for master student especially, this is something new for you. So you need to do a lot of study. You need to read a lot of references so that you are able to know what is actually happening in that particular context of study. All right. So that is the third thing. The fourth thing is that the review traces the progress of knowledge and the relation between various thoughts. That is very important because, as you can see, at one particular problem, it will be solved in many ways by the researchers all over the world. So you have to bring all this together to establish, all right, the arguments in your thesis. All right. So you have to actually bring from different perspective, right, and also from different dimension on the problem of the study that you're doing. So let's say you are actually trying to develop a module for game-based learning, for an example, for a certain subject. So you have to actually know who actually using this game-based learning for that particular subject area from different area of geographical boundaries, right? Not only in Malaysia, but it can be from other countries. Yes, one. And what are the different approaches that they have actually used to develop the game-based learning? And what are the different findings that they actually acquired from the intervention, okay, when they actually use GBL, the game-based learning, to the student. All right. So these are the things that you actually must be able to explain well in your thesis. So that is the fourth one. The fifth one is that this helps in establishing the limits of the available information and identifying gaps in the knowledge, right? Because you are going to solve a problem, you want to know the gap that exists, you need to do a lot of a literature review so that you know what are the actually existing gap and how you're going to close the gap. All right. So number 5 here actually saying that LR is so much important to establish the gap, all right, of your study. And the sixth one is that the identified gaps are investigated to establish new facts and add value to the field. All right. This is what I told you, right? So you have a problem and you are actually trying to look from a different dimension and different perspective. All right. And the literature review offers an insight, the author's depth of knowledge in their field. All right. So if I want to know what kind of a researcher you are, I just have to read your introduction, the first page of your thesis. All right. The first page of your thesis reflects what kind of a researcher you are. All right. So if you're just having only one references and you are talking about several statements, you are justifying several statements and you put claim only by using one or two references, it shows that you have a very shallow research method of literature review. All right. So that is why you need to actually, right, not only rely only on a certain literature, right? But I can see, okay, I have just read one thesis recently from different university, not from UPSI. Throughout their chapter 1, chapter 2, I would say it will be only 5 or 6 references has been used. All right. So when we are actually asked to the student why you only use these 5 or 6 as the base for your literature review, they say this is not a well-researched area, so we can find out only 5 to 6. But when I actually told him that, look at this, there are actually 100 over references over there, all right, in the Google search, when you're putting the keywords of your particular research, and I could find 100 over, all right, references over there that can be suited to your thesis. He couldn't answer that. All right. So this is where you must be very careful when you're actually doing your literature review, especially. All right. Because the examiners will go and dig into that references level. All right. Up to the level where they will dig into that. So you cannot just simply, give a lame excuse why you're only using 5 to 6 references throughout, all right, your chapter 1 and chapter 2. I can see this, the similar references has been mentioned many times. That is not good when you're writing your literature review. All right. So please bear that in your mind as well. All right. So this is why literature review. So I really hope that you are clear why you really need this literature review. So we already know the definition. We already know why we really need this particular literature review. We also need to actually know what is the aim of the literature review. Usually, the first aim of the literature review is that to show a thorough professional grasp on the area. That means who? You have to show, all right, you have that professional grasp. That means you're an expert. So when you're actually doing in a certain area of study, all right, you will be actually must be able to explain well, all right. So you just actually using 1 or 2, or usually we have one very bad, I would say practice, which is just rely on the thesis, someone's thesis, which is much related to our study, we just follow his or her thesis, right? That is not a good idea. You can actually use that thesis to follow the style of writing, all right, how they establish the chapters, the topics and subtopics. But the content must be come from you, all right? So you have to do the particular search, all right? And you have to actually look into very deep into that. Then you have to actually expand, not only just focusing, okay, I know that you're doing in Malaysia, yes. So you have a lot of Malaysian references, it's okay, good. But you have to expand it also from different perspectives. That means you must look from the Asian region, other countries, or you must look from the Australia, UK, and other countries as well, if it is relevant to your study, right? It is good to have different perspectives as well, all right, from different contexts. So that will be a good one, right? So this is where I would say that to show a thorough professional grasp. So you can actually explain, okay, in Malaysia, this thing is happening like this, okay, whereas in Singapore, it has been happening like this. Whereas in Germany, it has been happening like this, all right? So when you're actually able to explain in that way, it really shows that you are a good researcher, right? Okay, it really shows that you are a strong researcher. So this is where you have to actually, all right, go deep and also expand your literature in that particular specific area of your study. You don't need to talk so many things outside the context of your study, not necessary. Okay, it's not necessary at all. All right, but even it is specific, but make sure, right, it is coming from different things. All right. Moreover, in China, okay, China students, you love to only refer to China's context or China references, which is very, very not good at all. All right. Since you are doing your master's or PhD in Malaysia, you have to also bring some context of Malaysia and also other countries outside China as well. All right. So make sure that you have this thing. All right. Then, very importantly, all right, one of the aim of the literature review is to justify your research, right? Why your research is important, why your research must be done today, all right? So you have to actually ask the question, always ask a question, what we call as a so what question, all right? So what? So what you have this particular study. So what you want to do this particular research in that particular context, all right? So you must be able to answer. So in order to answer, you have to identify the gaps of the current knowledge, right? And you have to establish the need of your research, and you able to define the focus and boundaries of your research. Then only you are able to justify your research, or the question I call as a so what question, all right? Then to justify your approach, this is very much important for your methodology of chapter 3, all right? So you must be able to know what kind of research design that you're using to answer each of the research question. Then what are the methods related to the research design that you're going to do? All right. So you must be able to justify, all right, to answer this research question. This is my research design, and this is my method that I use. All right. So you must be able to justify it. How are you going to justify it? All right. Usually, we are actually justify using past research methodology. So let's say they are actually use this particular technique, right, to do a survey among the student. Then you can say this particular researcher used this particular technique to do the survey. All right. Is it only one references is enough for you to establish your method? No. All right. You have to actually come with 2 or 3 justification. That means you have to come with a new references, okay, up-to-date references, and many, okay, possible many references to support your methodology. All right. So to make it your justification for your approach stronger and viable. All right. So this is to justify your approach. Then basically, yes, for sure, one of the very important element of this literature review is to synthesize literature in an appropriate academic style. That means you have to provide a well-structured account that follow the logical progression, provides a well-argued account that supports your research question, provides a well-written account meticulously referenced. All right. So very importantly, right, you have to come with a logical progression. All right. That is very important when you're actually writing your whatever, okay, chapter, because LR, it is not only chapter 2. All right. Because some of the participants will think, okay, today Dr. Bala is giving talk on literature review, so it is only for chapter 2. Wrong. Chapter literature review starts starting point of your research until the ending point of your research. Okay. So it means what? In the first sentence, the first words that you write in your thesis until the last word that you write in your thesis, it is actually literature review, right? So don't think this is only for chapter 2 only, right? So this is the aim of the literature review. Okay, so once we know the definition, why we need the literature review, and also the aim of the literature review, now we go into the very important thing, which is seldom been overlooked. Okay, seldom have been overlooked by the researchers. What is that? The type of sources. All right. So what are the types of sources that we have? All right. And the classification of the sources for research. Usually we'll be having primary source, secondary source, and tertiary source. Tertiary source is something that seldom we use. All right. We seldom use for our masters and thesis, but there are certain area of research that they're using library catalogs and guides to literatures and so on. But usually, all right, 99% of us, we are using primary source and secondary source. All right. My advice is that primary, okay, what is primary source? Primary source is the first-hand report. First-hand report means it's in terms of a research article, all right, conference proceedings. That means I'm doing my research, I did my research, and I report that particular research. So that is what we call as a primary source, right? So journal article is usually what we call as a, and conference proceedings is what we call as a primary source. The secondary source will be the book. Okay, if you actually following the reference book, textbooks, directories, newspaper, all right, all these things, we called it as a what we call as a secondary source. All right, so you must have a proper proportion, right, for your thesis writing or even your journal article writing. Okay, when you're doing your research, there must be a proper proportion. So I would advise you, do not use more than 20%, all right, of your total number of references that belongs to secondary source. Okay, do not use more than that, right? So we want more and more primary source in our thesis or in our research, because that is the one is actually have a strong and viable justification for you. Okay, can give a proper justification for each claims and arguments that you put in your thesis, the primary source rather than the secondary source. So usually the book can be used to describe the theory. The book can be used to describe a certain basic, justification about sampling method, sampling size, and also the research design and so on. Yes, it can be used. All right. For example, if you're using research method book by Creswell, that is secondary source. That is okay. But to justify, okay, who and who has been used that particular method, then you need to do the primary source. All right. So usually make sure bear in your mind that you are actually need to use more primary sources compared to secondary source, and try to limit the secondary source around 20% only. This is the first time I'm using the word 20%, the quantity, the quantify, okay, the literature review here. All right. So for any of your, okay, that come into your mind, okay, how many percent and so on, I would say it's just 20%. Try to limit that. Yeah. All right. So make sure that 80% is more towards the primary source. Right. So I really hope that it is clear for all of you here. Okay. So usually this is the literature, because as you can see, when you actually look into your laptop, okay, there will be one folder called PhD or master. When you click into that particular folder, you will see 100, 200 references. Many references are there, right? So let's say you are first semester student now, or going for a second semester now. You will already have, right, about 100, 200 references in that particular folder, right? So you have to actually put up a good strategy on what should be read and what should be reported, all right? So it's like walking in the maze. Okay? The literature can bring you into that particular situation. So you need a good strategy so that you can actually move forward, all right? So these are the things that we are going to discuss up to now, the introduction of the literature review. Then now we are actually going to the strategics for reading the references and how to collect and also, all right, do the proper reporting for the references. So now, what you should look into the references. What you should look into the references as a researcher. First of all, right, while you are actually reading the references, you should look into the ideas that related to your topic, how it has been researched, applied, and developed. All right. So you already have 100, 200 references, right, in your what we call in your listing. All right. So what you need to know is that how, okay, while you are actually reading it, you should know, okay, how it has been researched, how it has been applied, and how it has been developed, you basically. All right. So while having that running in your mind, okay, that will be help you, right, to write a good thesis usually. Then you need to also find out, okay, when you're actually reading it, you need to come with the important issue of your topic that is related to your research topic only. Okay, we don't want outside of your research topic. So let's say you're doing some kind of a motivation for students in rural area, right? So try to focus on motivation among students in rural area. That's all. All right. You can actually have some perspective from urban area and so on to do some kind of a discussion in your thesis. But when you're actually reading it, you have to focus very much specific to this, right? Which is the what we call it as the motivation among the rural area student. All right. So these are the things. Then it is also good for you to have positive and negative standpoint related to your research topic. So let's say, yes, when you are reading certain journal, okay, then the particular researcher might say, all right, blended learning, it is not good for higher education. All right. But you are doing all right, your hypothesis is to support blended learning is good for higher education. So what you will do, you try to avoid that particular reference, right? Because it is quite negative from the hypothesis that you are trying to direct the readers. So but okay, usually we try to stand up, okay, we try to actually put it away, but actually that is not a good idea. If there is kind of a negative standpoint, please bring it to your thesis and discuss it. All right, this is what the nowadays the examiners love to see you, okay, from you, okay, because as a researcher, you need to come with both, right? It either can be positive or negative, all right, or it can be a combination of it. So we want you to put this in your thesis, all right? So let's say someone said blended learning it is not good, and your findings saying that it is good. So now you can actually do a discussion. You can actually discuss about the contradictory research that happened maybe a few years ago. Then you can discuss why that particular researcher failed to support the hypothesis, but you able to support the hypothesis. So these are the things that good to have in your thesis. If and only if you are able to find any kind of a negative, all right, standpoint, right? But don't go and search for negative standpoint until you waste your time. Okay, don't do that. Okay, if you are actually okay bump into this kind of a references or articles, then you can bring it into your study. Otherwise, it is okay. No worries about that, right? So this is my advice to you. So don't worry about the other things. Let us go to the second slide of the strategic of your reference writing, right? Sorry, for your literature review writing. So the first, the thing is that what you should get basically out of your literature review. So basically, you are able to get a better, deeper understanding of the interrelationship and intersection between the literatures, right? Because you will be having so many variables, right? Maybe 2 or 3 or 4 variables that you're going to measure. So through this particular thing, you're able to get the interrelationship and intersection between these variables, how these variables are connected each other into this particular context of study that you're going to do. All right. So while reading, you're able to do that. Then you are able to grip on what is known and where is the gap in the current body of knowledge. This is what I told you just now on the problem statement. So you're able to get the gap through this. So whether it is an evidence gap, is it a theoretical gap, is it an empirical gap? So you're able to get the type of gaps, all right, on that. Then you're able to recognize previously reported concept and patterns, right? So you're able to know, okay, how this particular study has been done, okay, earlier, and now what are the things that has been happened, and what are the things that you're going to do to support that, right? So most importantly, you're able to also recognize relevant theories for your study. What is the most important, I would say, quite difficult, okay, kind of, I would say, difficult things that we might encounter is to find the suitable theory. Because usually a shortcut people, what they will use is that, let's say your module have the element of technology, for an example. So they will go and search for a thesis, all right, or article, research article that been using some kind of a module that have the technology. So then they find, oh, this is one theory related to it. Okay, they just say, okay, these are the theory for it, or this is the model for it. That is very wrong, right? So you must actually go deep into the study to see whether that particular model really suitable for the module that you're going to do or not, for the development that you want to do or not, and who has been used this theory for that particular technology development. You have to actually mention not only one, there should be more. All right. And it is not only from the context from a certain country only. It must be coming from other countries as well. So when you actually want to find the theory, this has become a very difficult part because you need to do a proper study. Okay, you must be very meticulous, okay, in identifying the theory related. All right. So please make sure theory must be strong. All right. You must have a proper theoretical understanding for your research. Especially, this is so much important, especially for PhD student. Why? Because for PhD student, in the discussion of your chapter 5, you have to discuss about the theoretical implication. All right? You must look into the theoretical implication. So this is the things that you need to do. All right? So that is why your theory is so much important here. Right? So what you should get when you're actually doing the process of literature review, these are the things that you will be getting. All right. So how you should do the reference search and literature review writing. So this is how you should do basically. So how you should actually start to actually search for the references, right? So many of us still confused to be here, right? It all starts with the red color box here. Okay, I hope that you all can see the red color box. That is to identify your research objective or your questions. All right, look into your research objective and questions, then find the proper keywords. Okay, come with the keywords from the objective and the research question. Then that particular keywords, you go and to do the database search. It can be Scopus database, Google Scholar, My Site, or Web of Science. It depends. All right. So you search for the articles according to the proper keywords. Then when you search for the articles, you need to do some filter. That means you need to actually organize the article. You can organize the article according to the variables, according to the keywords usually. All right. So let's say you're doing motivation among rural students. All right. So you can have one folder just talk about motivation. Another folder you can just gather about rural student. Another folder is about motivation plus rural student. All right. So you need to do that kind of a filtration and sort it according to the particular folder rather than put all together in one folder. All right. So do not do that. Okay. Try to actually arrange it according to the folder. The folder must be according to the sorting according to the variables. All right. So this is how you should do it. So then after that, you need to do reading. All right. Reading. So once you actually read, let's say that particular research article, yes, when you actually download it, the title is good. The abstract is also suitable. But when you're actually reading into it, then you find, oh my God, this is something that is a little bit, out of my topic. Then you have to take it out. All right. Then you go for the search for articles again. All right. So that is one thing. Secondly, you may find in that particular article itself, they actually cite a very important article. Then you look into the article that the cite, then you go and search for that particular cited article. All right. Please avoid this one big mistake that a shortcut people used to do. That is to get the argument or claim that has been cited by other sources. For an example, in Ali's article, okay, there is a one article wrote by Ali, all right? Or let me put Emilia. Okay, let's say Emilia put one research article, all right? Emilia writing an article citing about my research. So she cite that Bala 2020 mentioned this. All right. Then you actually write in your thesis according to what Amelia wrote. That is wrong. All right. You actually have to go to Bala article, read, then you have to cite in your thesis. That is the good way, because perhaps sometimes Amelia might misquote what actually has been found by Bala. So that is very important for you to do double checking. All right. So you have to be very careful when you actually use this kind of a shortcut way of do a references. Right. So if you find that, oh, Bala has a very important point mentioned in Amelia's article, go and search for Bala's article. All right. Then read Bala's article, then put it in your thesis rather than just rely on what Amelia mentioned about my, all right, about my findings. Right. So please be careful here. Right. So that is the third one. And the fourth one, it is where you already start to actually build the themes and answer the research question and fulfill the research objective. You try to already build the synthesis and the matrices. Then after that, you will write the critical literature review. You already start writing it in your thesis. All right. Then after that, you will be refining it and go again. So it's an iterative process usually. All right. It's an iterative process. So it is not like a very systematic. Sometimes you can go and back again and again. All right. So this is the basic way of writing. All right. So sorry for the reference search and literature review, right? All right. So I will be actually talking about each step, right, in my next slide. So don't worry, eh? So I will be talking about how to build the synthesis, how to write the critical evaluation, and so on. So don't worry. So please bear with me. So what are the things that you need to find in the references? You have to actually come, all right, with a proper strategy, right? So basically, usually when we read the 20 pages, 10 to 20 pages of article, we are actually spending around 20-30 minutes for reading the whole article, right? But what we should actually get from the references. So this is where this particular slide, identifying what and where to find in the references. So if you're looking for a problem statement, when you're reading an article, look into the introduction, recommendation, and future work. This is where you actually can get the problem statement. All right. So it means what? You can actually get the gap, right? Because usually a good article will identifying what are the gaps available in the particular context of the study in introduction. Or they already said, okay, it has been there. But they also will mention what are the other gaps still exist in their recommendation and future work. This is how you can actually get, okay, the gaps for your particular study that can be written in the problem statement, right? So try to identify the gaps in the introduction or in recommendation and future works. All right. That is how we will identify it. Then if you are searching for the correct theory, then usually the theory will be discussed in the background study or methodology. All right. So if you read an article, usually the theory will be discussed in background study or methodology. So, but after you read, okay, after you got the theory, you better go to read the specific book on the theories rather than rely on the conference proceedings or journal article, especially because usually theories are well discussed in a book rather than journal article. All right. So this is how you have to go for it. Usually, but there are certain journal articles which only discuss about theories. Then you are so lucky. Then you are so lucky you don't need to read a book. You just can actually read on the journal article itself. Yeah. Then, if you are actually looking for the right research design, okay, the method of the research and the method of the research, then go and look into the methodology part of the article, right? So when you're reading the article, if you want to know what are the ways of doing the research, that means the research design for your study, to get the idea of your research design, straightly go to the methodology and study on that. All right. And when you actually want to justify and support your findings, usually it will be in the results and also the discussion part of the article. All right. So if you want to support and justify, you can go to the results and the discussion part of the article. So this is the simple way of actually identifying what you want and what the references can give you. Okay, what the article can actually give you. All right. So these are the things that you have to actually bear in your mind. All right. So let us go to the 5 key points for the literature review. So these are the very important things that we are going to discuss today on the strategy of how we going to collect the literature review and how we going to write the literature review, right? So collecting, organizing, and writing. All right. So collect, organize, and write. So how are we going to do that? So this is how, okay, these are the things that we're going to look into. One, how to choose the right reference. Second, summarize it. Third, how we're going to write the argument. Fourth, how to actually do the critical analysis, like what Sudha asked just now, how to do the critical evaluation. Yes, we're going to discuss. And how we're going to do the structuring of the literature review according to the chapters, basically, for the literature review. So collecting, organizing, and writing. The first important thing when you're actually doing this, strategics for the literature review will be the collecting part, right? So how we are actually going to collect the right references is that to choose the right references, basically. All right. So here you have to actually focus on the subject area. So the first and important thing that when you're actually doing this subject area, it is that to look into your research questions and objective. Let's say you don't have your research question and objective, you still actually searching for the topic that you're going to do, then you can actually look into the subject area first. All right. But once you already have your research questions and objective, then the other search that you should come with, it must actually following the variables, the elements that you put in the research questions and objective. Then make sure that when you actually choose the references, it must be relevant. So that is why I told you the first thing is that when you actually want to download it, read through the title and also the abstract. These two things can give you an idea whether you can download that particular article or not. All right. So that is the must be relevant. And it is also must be important. So how to actually know whether it is important or not? It is that after you're collecting so many, let's say you already have about 5 references related to the definition of STEM education. Okay, let's say you already have about 5 references that related to STEM education. Then do you need another one more 6? Not necessary, right? It is not more so it won't be important anymore because you already have a very good 5 references already. So you want more or not? Basically, I would advise stop. All right. So that is where it must be important. That is one. Secondly, is that is it important for your specificity of your research or not? So specifically, if you look into your research, right? So let's say it's about motivation among rural students. So you can actually to determine whether that particular is important or not, whether that particular article that you want to download is that talk about motivation among rural students or not. All right. So that is also another way to know whether it is important. All right. So must be relevant, must be important. So you may ask me, so if I want to know about a little bit more perspective rather than the motivation among the rural students, yes, you can collect, no worries. All right. But make sure the more articles is more towards the subject. That means the more towards the subject area of your study. You can actually have, like, say, academic performance among the rural student. Okay, although you're going to do motivation, yes, you can have academic performance. Doesn't matter. You can have, but not until 10, 20 articles on the academic performance. Not necessary at all, right? You can have 1 or 2, all right, the latest one to support, okay, somehow to expand your discussion. That's all. But you need to have more on the motivation among the rural student. All right. So hope that you got my idea here. Then it must be up to date. All right. So how? So maybe you all ask me. So what do you mean by up to date? To what year is what we call as up to date. Usually the examiners are looking for 5 years. All right. But let's say that particular area of study is very, very rapid moving. That means when you are actually using some kind of a technology, if it's a technology based, then let's say you are doing 2023, then at least it must be 2021. All right. That is what we consider it up to date. All right. Because technology is fast moving, right? So 2021 is will be the late, is the oldest, I would say, if it's related to technology, education, and so on. All right, if we are utilizing certain kind of a technology, then 2021 will be the oldest one. All right. Then one more thing that you might ask me also, it is that since I am going to actually submit my thesis in year 2025, but I already start to collect in 2021. Okay, my problem statement is in 2021 because I did my proposal defense in 2023, but my references are from 2021 up to 2023. So I'm going to submit my thesis in 2025. So what should I do? Usually, you will be actually adding the literature, the recent literature at the final round before you submit your thesis, right? So you will be adding it. So let's say you already put Bala 2021, then got Asia, all right, 2024. Then you just put Bala 2021. That is what you put in your proposed defense. Then semicolon Asia 2024 when you submitting your final thesis. All right. So this is how you can make your thesis up to date, right? Because let's say Bala and Asia mention the same thing. Then it is up to date, right? Your thesis. So that is how you should do it. So before you submit your final, all right, thesis for examination, make sure, all right, the references are also be up to date. All right. So this is how you have to choose the right references. So that is the first thing, right? And one more thing that you need to know is about, okay, let me go back, okay, before I go to the second one. the very important thing when you choose the right references is about the keywords as well. All right. So make sure your keywords that you put must be appropriate to the subject area, right? So when you go and search for the references for the articles in Scopus or Google Scholar, make sure the keywords that you put appropriate, because most of the time we don't put keyword, we put a long sentences. For example, let's say your subject area is motivation among rural students. All right, so you put motivation among rural students. That is not the right way of doing searching. Searching in database must be based on the certain keywords only. So you don't put a long sentences. All right, don't put that. That is not the way of doing searching, right? So please avoid that. Then let us go to the second. So you already collect all the references. You already have your 100 over articles already been, downloaded and stored in your folder called PhD. Now, the thing is that you need to do the summary. Because after reading each article, you need to do a summary. That is how a good researcher will do. Basically, you won't keep on reading and reading and reading. No, that is not the way. Because how much of things that you're going to store in your brain. All right. So once you read one article, then you need to do the summarize. So it will be easier to design a structure for the written review, okay, for your literature review. If you start grouping works as you read and take notes, all right? So when you read, you take notes. So the notes can be taken using one notebook or on that particular article itself. Let's say you have a printed article, then you can just jot down, all right? So that is the way of doing it. Then the building blocks of your argument will come from the notes. If you record your own thoughts and the connection that you're making between readings as you go. So you can see what will happen is that usually critical evaluation become a very tough thing, very difficult thing when you are not recording your own thoughts related to that research article. Basically, what we will be doing, the thesis writing, the citations will be mostly based on the journal article itself, right? But when you start to take note, it will be easier for you to identify which argument that you must put in the thesis. And when you are actually summarizing that particular article using your own word, okay, on your own word, it will be helpful for you to do the critical evaluation later. All right. So this is how a good researcher will be doing the summarized thing here. All right. So they will take note. They will highlight very important arguments in the article. Then they also will summarize overall using their own words as well. Then after that, when you continue doing that for like 100, 200 articles, what you will get? You will get a proper connections there, right? So you're able to see how each articles are connected each other, all right? So that is why I told you just now, when you're actually sorting that particular, article, it is important to put it in a different folder according to different variables and so on. All right? So this is the thing. Then how we can do the summary? One, we can actually do it in a mind map thing, right? So let's say you are talking about one big problem, then there are few approaches for that particular problem has been solved, and what are the things will happen, what they have mentioned, what they have actually contributed. Everything will be done using the mind map. Okay, that is for visual people. Visual people, okay, as you are a visual person, let's say you like to do like this, right? But let's say you are not a visual person. You are very structured, very logical person. Then a table will be a good one, right? So you can actually have, all right, while you're actually reading, you already have set, okay, you already put a table, you put the author, you put the year, what is the title of that particular article, what the aims of that particular article, what method has been used, what is the sample size, what has been concluded, and okay, your own comments, right? Your own words, okay, you put the comments. But your own words must be related to the research article, right? So this is how you should do that, all right? This is a very simple beginning table, I would say. For beginners, for researchers, you can have this kind of a table as long as you actually do the reading of your article, all right? But let's say, okay, you already go into the second stage, right? That means you already started to have, okay, after your research question and research objective has been defined, okay, and approved by your supervisor. Then after that, most of your summary of your article should be in this way, right? Because you already go to the second stage, right? So the first stage will be your problem statement, research question, and research objective. That must be strengthened. So you can have the first table. This is a very simple table first. Then once this has been established, then this is the things that you need to do. All right. So I will actually encourage you to use this table for your literature review, as you already established your research question and research objective. Why I'm telling you this? Because your research question and research objective, when both of it has been established, okay, when it has been established, what will happen is that you already can get the proper specific area, right? So you already know, okay, what you're going to do. You have the proper direction already. Then, okay, when you do the searching for the article, it will be very helpful for you, all right? Once you already have like this, right? Implication for future research, implication for practice, all right? And so on, all right? It is more detailed table. So hope you understand why there are two different tables which I shown you. All right. All right. So the second one just now is about the summary, right? And the third one will be the argument. This is where you already start to write down. Okay, you already start to write. So first, just now is collect, then organize, that is summarize. Now you already start to write. That means you already start write the first sentences in your thesis. All right. So usually the argument divided into three main elements. First, claim, reason to support the claim, and evidence that support the reasons. So you can see the logic flow here. You have the claim, you have the reason, then you have the evidence as well, right? But is it all your argument in your thesis must have these three things? Not necessary. It can be a combination, okay, or it can be standalone, all right? It can be a claim only, or a claim plus reason, or claim plus evidence, or reason plus evidence, all right? It can be a combination, all these things, all right? So this is how you actually put the argument in your thesis. So the argument is also known as your statement. All right. So different researcher or different research paradigm using these words differently. That's all. All right. So argument, statement. All right. So this is all a normal thing. Right. So they use it interchangeably. So don't be confused with that. All right. All right. So now these are the three things. So this is how you can actually write down. All right. So let's say a claim will look like this. the study builds on and contributes to work in what? Okay, that is what we call as a claim. If it's a claim plus reason, all right, you have like this. Although studies in dash have examined dash, they have been not a what. All right, so this is what we call as a claim plus reason. Right, you have also reason plus evidence, and you have only evidences as well. All right, so the researchers addresses this issue by demonstrating what? Okay, that is what we call as the evidence-based argument. Right, so your argument, that's why I told you just now, your argument can be a standalone or combination. All right, so it can be only a claim, it can be just a reason, or it can be just an evidence, or combination of that. All right, so these are the ways of writing the argument. This is a very, okay, that is will be the basic thing. But what, as a good researcher, that you need to do basically? Usually the argument will be having the synthesis component, right? So just now you look at this is all standalone. That means this is not much of a synthesis happens. All right, this is not much of synthesis happens if it's a standalone. But once you already have, okay, different references combined. For an example, you have one claim, then you have a reason for it. That means a claim from Bala and reason from Farizal, for example. Then you combine two together. This is what we call as a synthesis. Let's say the claim and the reason from Bala, then it is not synthesis. All right. So synthesis means number of references to make one argument. Right. So usually you need to connect different literature to review, recommend, and make connection to the research. Right. So always remember, when you have a synthesis in your argument, that will be a good literature review, right? So if that's why I say, if you just rely on only one particular article to do your argument, then it is not a good research. Okay, but somehow you can avoid that, right? So sometimes a certain thing only been mentioned by Bala. That means the claim, the reason, the evidence only in that particular article. That is okay. But don't put Bala in many occasions in your thesis. All right. In introduction, I can say 10 times you mentioned about Bala. Literature review also about 20 times. Then methodology also another 20 times. Then your chapter 5 also another 20 times. Then it means that you are not a good researcher because you're using Bala many times. All right. So you cannot go away. You cannot actually go beyond Bala, which is very bad way of writing your literature review. So this very good way of writing literature review is through the synthesis. All right. That means making combination of more than one references. So always bear in your mind that when you have a claim, evidence, and reasons, claim, reasons, and evidence based only from one particular citation, that is not synthesis. Synthesis when you have more than one, okay, more than one references. So something like this, all right? How, all right? So in order to write a good synthesis, usually we need a synthesis table, because then only you are able to put up in a nice way your argument in your thesis. So for an example, if you want to actually have the synthesis for definition of STEM education, so you can have reference 1 say what, reference say 2 what, reference 3 say what. All right. So that is why I say for a certain things like this, definition, issues, and so on, okay, you actually need to have the most up-to-date references and relevant and important, right? And you may ask me again, so how many references it is good for to put for one team, for an example like this? As I already told you earlier, it can be not more than 5. 5 should be a good one number. All right. And make sure all up to date and relevant. Okay. So this is the way to do the synthesis table, so that when you're writing your argument, when you write your statement in the thesis, it will be easier for you, because you don't need to go find here and there, because you already have the summary table, right? So from the summary table, you bring this synthesis table as well. All right. But in synthesis table, it will be determined by the tips that you like to put in the thesis. So, for example, how we can write an argument and how we can write a synthesis argument. All right. So just now, let's say UPSI is the best education university in the world. Let's say you just put Bala only. This is what we call as just a normal argument. A normal argument, which is a claim. All right. But since there is a Ali as well here, it's already become a synthesis, because you have more than one references. But a good synthesis not only stand alone. A good synthesis must combine. That means claim, reason, and evidence. So how we can see a good synthesis argument? It's through like this. The second example, just okay. Look at the second example. UPSI is the best education university in the world. Who said? Bala said. Because it is the only education university in the world ranked top 10 universities by the Times Higher Education ranking. Who said? Ali said. Which published in the THE website in year 2021. Which evidence? THE website. All right. So can you see there are 3 references which make one is a claim, one is the reason, another one is the evidence. So this is a good argument synthesis, we called it. So when you have a claim, reason, and evidence that is directing to the same point by different references, this is what we call as a good literature argument synthesis. All right. So I really hope that I'm able to give you how to write a good synthesis here. So now let us go to the next one. Critical analysis. This is where just now I think Sudha asked me, right, how to write a critical analysis and so on. So this is how you should do that. As a writer of your literature review, you should be controlling a few things. All right. So the first thing is the overall structure of the review, the way in which you integrate and comment upon the work in the field. Then allowing your voice to be heard equates to making your argument come through clearly. So these are the things that you need to actually understand when you're writing your critical analysis. All right. So these are the few things that you must know when you are writing the critical analysis. But just by mentioning this, you're not able to understand, right? So let us go to the example of write critically. So let's say you have these 2 statements or arguments by these 2 different citations. All right. So you put in your, okay, you already put in your thesis, but how are you going to bring it as a critical writing? So this is the very important aspect that you need to look into. So for an example, right, the first statement by Kim and Hodges, okay, they mentioned that students with low motivation may not learn at all, even though they may have participated in a particular learning activity. So this is the first claim by Kim and Hodges. All right, that is one. Second, okay, let's say you put that, okay, you put that in your thesis. Okay, sorry. Then the second one, let's say you have Kignoni mentioned that, okay, Kignoni et al. Mentioned that, all right, you put another claim by Kignoni, yeah, mentioned that students can become more engaged, motivated, and persistent in partaking the learning process in a close monitoring and guidance of their instructors, whereby the students will feel more confident. All right. So these are the two things, all right, two claims that you put in your thesis. Okay, right now. Now, from these two claims, can you write one critical analysis? All right. So you need to write one critical analysis from these two claims. So what will happen usually, it is that the claims, the argument, basically I don't want to say claim because sometimes the claim will come with the evidence and reasons and so on. So you just say, Ali said this, Kim said this, Kitnoni said this. Sorry, but from these two things, what you actually can come, what kind of analysis that you have made, not been mentioned in your thesis, usually in your chapter 2. Usually in chapter 2, we will be like reading a textbook. That means you just say, Ali said this, Ahmad said this, Chong said this, Bala said this. That's all. All right. But we want to know how you make sense from those claim, evidence, and reasons that you stated in your thesis. How this makes sense to the context of your study. All right. So this is how a good researcher will do. That means they will actually write critical analysis. So how will you will be actually doing it? All right. So let's say you have these two things. What is the critical analysis that you can do here? That is the critical analysis. Starting from these two things, you can say that when you want the students to learn better, motivated, all right, it needs monitoring from instructors in a new learning environment for students. Why? Because as you can see, that Kim said that with low motivation, the students won't participate in any learning activity. While Kitnoni says that when there is a good monitoring system, the student will feel more confident, all right, in learning. So you can actually say that they need monitoring so that they can be motivated. All right. So this is how you can actually bring these two things into one together. This is what we call as a critical analysis. All right. So these are the things that you need to understand how to write a good critical analysis, especially when it comes to the chapter 2. And you may ask me also, okay, let us go to the second example as well. Here, okay, say that interest in STEM reach its peaks during middle school years. Okay, this is what you say. Nordin said that number of Malaysian students enrolling in science stream at upper secondary level has decreased to only 26% of the total number of students. Okay, but that may be a few years ago, but now it's only around 15 to 16% only. Okay, it's already decreased more. All right. So from these two things, what you can actually make sense from these two arguments, right? So from these two arguments, you can make sense that when you want to actually create interest in STEM, it should start, okay, in the middle school years, so that the number of the students in that actually going to take science stream will be increased, right? Because you can see here that interest in STEM should be cultivated in middle school years among Malaysian students. Why? Because Nordin say it's already decreased, right? But here say it can be increased if you do some kind of intervention in the middle school year. So that is why the analysis will come. Interest in STEM should be cultivated in middle school years among Malaysian students. But actually there is a other explanation comes lah. But this is the very basic point, okay, of the analysis. Then you can say, okay, by doing that, okay, the number of Malaysian students who actually going to pursue in their science stream can be increased. when there is a proper intervention done at the middle school years. All right. So you can actually elaborate the analysis. But actually, is it coming from you? No. You are actually putting it your own analysis, but based from who? Here and nodding. So usually we have another question. So can we put our own word? Okay. This is where you are mistaken. Critical analysis is not is about your own word. Yes, it's the own word because this is my own word. But I have the argument to support, right? I have the evidence to support. Who? Here and nodding. All right. So when an examiner says like this, they cannot say much because I already put the argument, evidence from the two different scholars by here and nodding. Then I explain it. So this is what we call as a critical analysis. So you don't need to actually worry because sometimes students, okay, candidates of masters and PhD will be very worried. They will be saying, how can we can put our own word or our own point of view? Okay, so critical analysis is not about your own point of view. It is about your own analysis out of the evidence that you already stated. That, all right? So please bear that in your mind. Okay, so these are the things that you have to put in. All right, so this is the possible analysis that we may write in our thesis. One of it is that specifying certain limitation, explaining the impact of the limitation. Okay, this is the analysis that we can have. Then suggesting future research, stating possible contributions. These are what you can do in terms of writing your chapter 5. Okay, the critical analysis that you can have it in your chapter 5. All right. Just now, it is for the chapter 2. All right. The previous 2 slides is for the chapter 2. That means you are actually trying to bring, okay, the analysis to the context of your study. Here, you are trying to bring it to the future. Okay. From the findings, what you get and how, okay, it's going to impact the futures and so on. So this is the critical writing that can be written in chapter 2 and also for chapter 5 as well. All right. But you may ask me, is it critical analysis only for chapter 2 and chapter 5? No, it will be starting from chapter 1 itself. Right. It is just that I'm showing you the example that you can write. But actually, this analysis, which I show you now, it is also can be applicable for chapter 1 as well. All right. So chapter 1, chapter 2 can use this, and chapter 5 you can use in this way. All right. So another way, I will, okay, this is the example of writing critical analysis in the thesis. All right. So how you can do that? Usually we can do in 2 ways, the critical analysis. Like this. You put it in one paragraph. All right. The aims, the claims, and the arguments, okay, from the different sources, right? Different sources about a certain thing, right? You can say Ali said this, Ahmad said this, Chong said this. Then at the end of the paragraph, okay, at the end, the last sentences of your paragraph comes your critical analysis. Okay, that is will be one way of doing it. Another way is that, all right, after you write all the paragraphs, like for example, this paragraph, okay, Ali said this and that, all right, Chong said this, another paragraph saying about Bala said this, Farizal said this, and so on. Then the final paragraph, you come with your own critical analysis, all right, one dedicated paragraph. So it can be in the sentences itself, or it can be one dedicated paragraph. It's up to you on how to write your critical analysis. This is how a critical analysis should be done in your chapters for your thesis. All right. So is it all clear here?
Very clear, Prof.
All right. Okay, good. So when someone says it's very clear, then I'm also happy here. All right. So this is how you should do the critical analysis. So don't just simply keep on put Ali said this, Ahmad said this, and so on. But that must be accompanied by the analysis. So the analysis that you want to put, all right, you try to analyze this two statement and relate that thing into your context of your study. That will be a good critical analysis. All right. So this is what you should do. All right. So that is for the number 4. So that is the critical analysis just now. Number 5 will be the structuring. This is where sometimes we may get confused and a little bit, feel it is quite difficult for us to do the structuring itself. Because the main aim of structuring your literature review is to lead your reader to the point. But sometimes we don't know how to actually make to the point. So is it must start from a very large perspective, from a very huge perspective to the specific, so from the wide perspective to the specific, or from the specific perspective to the wide perspective. It's a little bit confusing, right? Sometimes when we write our chapter 2, all right? Usually in chapter 2, we have the confusing here, all right? Chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 and others, you can actually, yes, somehow it's been directed. Okay, that means you know how to able to write it. But in chapter 2 itself, what you should write first? Okay, and how we going to write, right? So usually when you're actually doing the structuring, it is better to organize patterns which is common in terms of their concepts and themes, common in terms of historical development, common in terms of approach to a question, and common in terms of debates and the arguments. All right. So if you put in these ways, then it's easier for you to fit on. You know that, okay, this is good for the problem statement. Then you bring it to the chapter 1. Then you put it, this is might be very good for methodology. Then you bring it to chapter 3. All right. So this is how you do the arrangement. But how we actually write down the literature itself. All right. So basically, if you can see, you should actually, in each of your part of your discussion, okay, your explanation in your chapter 2, all right, it is like a wide to specific. Even your problem statement, all right, even your problem statement, you should actually talk about the very wide perspective, then you go to the specific problems. All right, that will be a good way of doing it. And for each of the topics and subtopics in your chapter 2, okay, make sure, all right, you introduce, then you put the context of the topic, then you do the critical analysis for your related to your research objective and research questions of your study, which I already mentioned to you, the critical analysis just now, right? So when you do the critical analysis, you do the analysis to the context of your study. So usually the context of the study mainly should be focused on your specific to your research question and research objective. So let's say you're going to do about, let's say in your chapter 2, you have like a very introductory topic. For example, education in Malaysia, right? So you can actually introduce the historical development of Malaysian education. Then you can come to the context of your topic. That means, let's say you want to talk about rural student, right? Then you can talk about what is the education system done for rural student, right? So you can actually talk about the context of that particular topic. Then finally, you can actually say that how the Malaysian education system, all right, how the Malaysian education system have facilitating or actually doing some kind of a arrangement or initiatives for rural students. That will be the final part of that particular topic of Malaysian education system. Okay, let's say you want to do like that. Okay, let's say one of your topic for your chapter 2.1 Malaysian education system. So you don't just talk about Malaysian education system, but Malaysian education system, then context of your topic, then you bring it, the critical analysis in terms of the context of your study. That is how each of the topics, subtopic that you put in your chapter 2 should be structured. All right. So this is another, okay, this is a very good way of doing the structuring of the literature review. All right. Let us do. Okay. So how you going to structure your chapter 2 of your thesis? Usually this is a big, always a, a problem for those who not yet start writing their chapter 2. So take the research topic, all right? Then identify the themes according to a few things here. One of the best way of identifying what topic and subtopic that you want to put in your chapter 2 is through your research objective and research question. Okay, that will be a good way of doing it. All right, so you can actually have in this way. So let's say this is my topic of my research, that is motivation to be creative among primary school students. So I can actually put the thing according to the theme. That means creativity among students. One is motivation, one is primary education. Maybe I can add more on teaching for creativity and creative teaching. That can be my theme. But that will be good if I'm able to come with the objective and research question. Then I structure my chapter 2 according to that. Okay, according to that. So it will be easier for you to come with a appropriate and more efficient structure for chapter 2. Right? So this is how we can do that also. So for example, just now that is according to the theme. This is according to the research questions and so on. Right? So this is how we should do it. Right? So this is a very basic thing. It is not very hard, but the thing is the starting point. So I really hope that I show you, okay, when you do your chapter 2, what you should be based for your topic and subtopic. This will be easier for you to do next thing. And one more thing that in chapter 2 that you should include is the detailed explanation about the theory or theories that you used for your study, right? So after, yes, for sure, the variables will be discussed and so on. But in chapter 2, there must be one particular topic that must be dedicated for explaining about the theories that you used in your study. Because in your chapter 1, even we have a theoretical framework, okay, that is not enough because you will be just discussing in brief. But in chapter 2, you will be elaborate that thing, right? So that is how you do your chapter 2 theory writing. All right. So what are the things that you need to have, right, as a proper characteristics for the literature review? All right. So the first thing is that it must be concise. There must be a good clarity. It must be critical. And at the same time, it must be rational itself. Okay, so let us look into the concise thing. Why it must be concise? Because as you know that you cannot write all the things. Okay, you cannot write all the things that in your particular context of your study. Because if you're going to write in that way, what will do is that you are going to actually not going to write your thesis according to your subject, to your specific focus. You're going to write a big textbook that related to the overall study area. So that is why it must be concise, right? So when you're writing a literature review, you have to remember it should be driven by your research questions or research objective generally, right? Secondly, there must be a brief synthesis of wide array of literature in your research area. Yes, if you search for a certain research area, there are 1,000, even 10,000, okay, 10,000 results of articles there. right? If you go to Google Scholar, sometimes you will be surprised. When you put some keywords, it appeared to be like 1,000, maybe more than 10,000 search results will be there. So that is where you have to brief synthesize the wide array of literature in your research area. So you must be very focused, specific, but at the same time, you have to also bring wide perspective on that particular specific area. We have a two situation here. One, your research area is a well-defined research area. All right, it's well established. Once it's well established, you actually have so many research articles written in that particular research area. So it will be easier for you to find so many things. What will happen is that you will be trying to more, okay? You will be expanding more. But when you're expanding more, what will happen is that you forgot to focus on your specific area. That is one. One situation, another situation is that, all right? So if that is the case, okay, let me go to the first case. If it's already well established, so many people are doing the research in that area, you can actually put very specific thing there. But let's say your particular research area, not many people are doing it, all right? And a few of them are doing it. You can actually expand the specific, okay? When you're actually explaining about the specific area, you can expand this perspective from different geographical boundaries. All right. Even you are actually mentioning about Malaysia, you can also bring from the perspective from Indonesia. You can bring from the perspective of China. You can bring the perspective from US, UK, okay, and and from Europe regions and so on. That will be actually a good way of doing it. All right. So you have a two situation, and you must know how to handle it properly. Okay. So that is the concise things comes. And the second one is the clarity. Clarity, every argument must be clear and easy to understand. That is very, very important. Because even when we want to say a certain definition, it must be clear to you, right? And you are able to understand what that particular writer or the author want to actually explain or discuss in the thesis. Just like you're all saying today, right? When you are saying, clear doctor, okay, I'm able to understand you well. What it means? Because there's a clarity, right? Clarity in my explanation. So the same thing goes to your thesis. There must be clarity in the explanation. So you don't go beating around the bushes and come to the point. Straight go to the point. Be objective, right? That is a very important thing for a researcher to write literature review, all right, in the thesis. So literature review in thesis, don't just think about chapter 2. When I say literature review in thesis, it's about chapter 1 until the final chapter, all right? So there must be a proper clarity, all right? I have seen my China students, they are like to do a lot of explanation. They like to do they like to do a lot of a story, all right? Then only go to the specific. Please avoid that, okay? Please avoid that, because we don't want to hear so many story. We want to straightly go to the point. So that is why arguments must be clear and easy to understand. Because for your information, because I have seen Malaysian student and China student, because I have actually China students with me and also Malaysian student. China students, maybe their culture of writing is in that way. So they like to write a lot of things. All right. Then they will come to the specific point. But in Malaysia thesis writing, we don't go for much of a story, but we straightly go to the point. So that is what my for the international students over here, bear that in your mind. Then critical. Okay, the literature review must be critical, whereby the reflection, it must all right, put your position and belief in the context of the study. So this is where I told you just now, right? When you're doing your critical analysis, the critical analysis must reflect to your study, right? So that is how you should bring it together. And the analysis must be assessed in terms of critique of the literature, all right? This is another thing that I already mentioned to you just now. And it must be rational itself, okay? So when you're writing your literature review from chapter 1 until the final chapter, it must be able to convince the reader that this particular research area is so important so that they can understand and also they can actually somehow answer themselves the so what question. All right. Then the second one is to articulate writing in a way that makes sense. Then the third one is the justification of the argument, support, and the findings. So there must be a proper logic and rational way of writing your literature reviews, starting from chapter 1 until the final chapter. So this is how you can actually write down your literature review in your thesis. All right. So in chapter 1, usually, okay, where the literature review is so important, I'm just trying to highlight, okay, where you need to actually emphasize the literature review writing. The first one is that in your problem statement, this is very important. So you need to collect all the problems or issues of the study from different perspectives and geographical boundaries, and most importantly, to identify the gap. All right. So that is the first one in chapter 1. And discussing the theories, okay, justification, who have utilized it is also important. So when you say, okay, I'm using this Bandura cognitive theory, but when you actually say it's a Bandura cognitive theory because you're testing a few things, right? Cognitive, for example. But don't just don't just leave it there. You have to justify. That means you must say, okay, maybe Chong in 2022 doing the same measurement on the cognitive, and he also using the same theory. All right. So this is how, okay, this is you have to mention here. You have to also, all right, write down the progress of the study in the chapter 1 through the proper literature review, because the literature review is so important because it gives you a proper understanding about the progression of the study. For example, in 1980s, what has been done, 1990s, what have been done, 2000, now what has been done. So you have to actually know about that so that you can put it properly in your chapter 1. All right. So that is the very important thing for literature review, writing, and also literature review reporting for chapter 1. Right. So these are the three, I would say, from my point of view, this is where you need to do a proper literature review. All right. So in the chapter 2, we'll be having the claims and arguments. And most importantly, critical analysis should exist in chapter 2 in many occasions. So that is why I say to you that in chapter 2 itself, there will be, all right, part by part. All right. So in each part, make it a funnel concept. All right, the funnel concept. Then after that, at the end, okay, of that particular paragraph, for each of the topic, all right, you must have critical analysis, or it can be in the sentences itself. Maybe you can put one argument, two argument, the three argument, the third argument, the fourth one, you put your own sentences analyzing the three arguments above. All right, it can be that way, or it can be in a paragraph way. But when you do the analysis, make sure the analysis should be linked with the context of your study. All right. So every time you try to link it with your context of the study. All right. Then each topic and subtopic should have important, relevant, and up-to-date references. So that is very important for chapter 2, because most of the examiners will be looking into it. They will trying to search, okay, whether it's up to date or not. All right. Then third, use funnel concept for each topic and subtopic. And this is what I think I already have mentioned just now. It's the inverted triangle thing. All right. Justify and okay for chapter 3. All right. Where is the LR is so important? It is to justify and support each part of the research design and methodology of the study. All right. For example, your research question is to explore. So for sure, your research design will be qualitative, right? And the method can be interview or observation. So you have to mention that. And you have to justify why, all right, this is qualitative. Why it is an interview. Who actually have mentioned that, all right? So that is one. Secondly, to support the sampling size and method, all right? Sorry. Sorry. Usually, you can see that when you do the support, the sampling size and method, all right, you will be using some kind of a technique, right? Maybe a G power technique. Then you must justify, all right? You must justify who and who actually use G power. From where this G power calculator, sampling size method comes from, all right? And also you must find out. Then let's say the method, all right? Let's say the method is now, it is on the qualitative, okay? You're doing interview. And who has done the interview, okay, for this similar study? So you have to justify in that way. Okay, you have to support, okay, in that way. And you also need to support in terms of the epistemology of the research itself, all right? So you can have two ways of supporting it. One is the epistemology, the meaning of the methodology itself. Then secondly, the context of the study. All right, you can do the justification these two ways. So that is why literature review is so important. Then you justify the way the analysis for each research question will be done. All right, so you need to have these three things in your chapter 3, whereby your literature review is more important. Then in your chapter 4, it is very important that LR is important in terms of justify and support the analysis method that you use. Okay, for an example, just now, Madam Naila asked me about the, for example, normalize, is it normal or not normal distributed? So how you know it's normal and not normal? If it's not normal, how you know it's a non-parametric? So there must be a proper LR to support it, right? So this is where the chapter 4 will come. So the LR will come for chapter 4. All right. So you need to have a grasp, okay, a proper grip in terms of the analysis itself. All right. So it can be done via proper literature review. So you must know, okay, who and who you can actually refer to. All right. Then in chapter 5, yes, this is where you will do the support and justify the findings via link with the past recent research. All right. You have to link your findings with the past recent research. That's why I put the reason is in a capital word. So usually when you actually support your findings, please find, okay, the most recent research. All right. Then sorry. Then number 2 is that in chapter 5, looking into the theoretical discussion on each finding's implication to the body of the knowledge. That means here is that in chapter 5, especially for the PhD thesis, we want to look into the theoretical contribution. So this is where your LR is so important, all right, in bringing the theory that you use and how your findings can contribute to the theoretical development or theoretical implication. All right. So this is how it works. So in chapter 5, do not forget to discuss about the theory as well, because for PhD, that is the ultimate. All right. So this is the examples of the literature review in the thesis, in which I just highlight the most important part of each chapter where you need to concentrate more for your literature review. Right?